The second thing that helps me is really my belief system. And so we all have different belief systems. And I'm not here to ask you to change your belief system, but I'm going to share with you my belief system. So I come from a scientific background. I'm a vet after all. And energy, the entire planet, everything on this planet is made up of energy. And I've alluded to this before, but the more we move into quantum physics and the more we discover what's going on, the more we come to realize that this body that I present myself as in the physical form actually is more space than solid matter. The atoms and the electrons and the protons that buzz around take up more space between them than there is actually solid matter. And yet I present as a solid living being. But the thing, so we're energy. The thing that I really want to say about energy is that we know that energy cannot be destroyed. So I believe that the soul is energy. I also believe that our animal companions have a soul. And so when we transition from life to death, we know from humans of near-death experiences what happens when the soul moves from the body into another plane of existence. And so what helps me to work with the death of a loved one and the death of my patients is the fact that energy cannot be destroyed. Energy is transformed or transmuted into something else, into another form of energy. Because it's in another form of energy and not physically on this plane, I look for other signs that enable me to remember that animal or that person. It could be conversations. I remember my dad when I wake up early and I'm enjoying the dawn and I'm watching the sunrise. My dad was an early riser. It was a beautiful space and time for him. When my mom died, one of my colleagues gave me a little miniature rose, and that rose sits on my balcony. And I frequently, I walk past it every day, but when it's flowering, the rose has the most beautiful fragrance. And I remember my mother, and I remember the smell of my mother. We are sensory beings. We are on this planet with 5 senses, and we are still able to go into each of those senses. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? What do we taste? What do we feel? All of those things in our memories to assist us to honor the life of that being that is no longer with us on this physical plane. So because I believe that energy is not destroyed and that my companion's soul, and indeed the soul of all of the people that I've loved and lost, are simply on the other side of the veil. They are in another dimension. They're on another plane that as a breathing, living human being, I perhaps can't access. But if we talk about ESP, extrasensory perception, that is our ability outside of our 5 senses to connect to other more subtle levels of energy. I listened to a man called Matt Kahn. He's a really incredible spiritual teacher and leader. And when he talks about grief, he talks about the loved ones that we have lost are really right next to us. They're not even in the next room. They're right next to us. And we can keep them alive and we can keep their energy tangible in our space by talking to them and talking out loud. And so if your partner or your family thinks you're crazy, so be it. I talk to my dad, I talk to my mom, I talk to my animals, my companions that have crossed over. I talk to the live ones, but I also talk to the ones that have passed over because I believe that they are simply a breath away.